Hey guys, Eckhart's Letter here, and welcome again to another Star Wars Top 5 list. Last week we counted down the top 5 Rebel Alliance capital ships in Star Wars Legends. Well, this week we're doing the same, but we're keeping it to canon only. Now, canon includes all 7 movies, Star Wars Rebels the TV show, the Clone Wars TV show, and all books that have been released since Disney bought Lucasfilm. I've only got a couple of rules for this list, and the first is that I'm not including any ships that the Rebels stole. I want to see ships that they used widespread throughout their navy. I also will on occasion be looking at Legends for some ship specifications, just because the old expanded universe really fleshed stuff like that out a lot more. Alright, so let's get right into the list with number 5, and it's the Hammerhead Corvette. And I know what you guys are thinking, geez, the Hammerhead Corvette is the 5th most powerful ship used by the Alliance. They really weren't packing a whole lot of heat, and well, that is true, and there are probably a couple of reasons for this. The first is that, of course, we don't know all of the ships the Rebels used, and we might learn more as Star Wars Rebels concludes and as we get more material from that era, but it's very possible that the Alliance had other capital ships that we haven't seen yet. We also know that the Alliance was massively underpowered compared to the Empire, so they relied more heavily on guerrilla and hit-and-run tactics, along with strong starfighters that could dominate enemy TIE fighters. But let's get back to talking about the Hammerhead. Now, those who love Star Wars Legends like I do probably know that this ship was based off the old Hammerhead class cruiser, which appeared probably most prominently in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. But these ships are not the same, and they're not even the same ship class. A cruiser is meant for frontline combat, while a Corvette typically plays a secondary role within a fleet. And admittedly, we don't know a whole lot about the Hammerhead, but the fact that it is a Corvette tells us a lot about it. We know that it's pretty small, and we can see this in the Battle of Scarif when compared to the Star Destroyer. We know that it's pretty fast, and as again we saw in the Battle of Scarif, it obviously has quite an engine behind it, but it's also really poorly armed with only 3 dual laser cannons. Don't get me wrong, the ship is pretty useful and it fills a niche, but it's not what I would choose for a frontline engagement. Number 4 is the CR90 Corvette, commonly known as the Blockade Runner, and this ship has the distinction of being the first ship not only seen but also heard in the Star Wars franchise. Much of what I said about the Hammerhead Corvette really applies to the Rebel Blockade Runner as well, so I'm going to try to keep it pretty brief. There are a few things that make this ship better, in my opinion at least, than the Hammerhead class. Although it is only 125 meters long, which is probably pretty similar in size to the Hammerhead, the CR90 has 2 double turbo lasers and 4 single turbo lasers. It could also operate as kind of a mini carrier by attaching 3 A-wings to the outside of the ship, which obviously gives it a bit of versatility that the Hammerhead doesn't really have, and that, combined with its firepower and probably similar other stats, put the CR90 at number 4. Number 3 is the EF-76 Nebulon B Escort Frigate, or as most of us call it, the Nebulon B. At 300 meters long, the Nebulon B was much higher tonnage than any of the Corvettes in the Rebel fleet, and unlike the first 2 ships on this list, the Nebulon B could also act in a frontline cruiser role rather than as a secondary support ship. Along with its larger size came more impressive firepower, and the Nebulon B had 12 laser cannons and 12 turbo lasers. This meant that it had both anti-starfighter and anti-capital ship capabilities. The ship also had a large hangar, which allowed it to carry a dozen or more starfighters into battle. I'm not gonna lie, I have always wondered why the ship has this really thin section connecting the front of the ship with the engines, but despite that, it's still the 3rd most powerful ship used by the Rebel Alliance. Number 2 is a new fan favorite, the MC80 Mon Cal Cruiser. And a ship of this class known as the Profundity participated at the Battle of Scarif, although it was eventually disabled and then destroyed. At over a kilometer long, the MC-75 is the first true capital ship on this list. And as the Nebulon B was a jump from the smaller Corvettes, this ship is a further jump over the Nebulon B. The MC-75 was fairly well armed. It had 12 proton torpedo launchers, 4 ion cannons, 12 turbo laser cannons, and 20-point defense laser cannons, and this allowed it to engage directly with Imperial capital ships. However, I will say, and I guess this is kind of unsurprising, that even with its pretty decent firepower, the MC-75 was still terribly outgunned by even an Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer. There are, at least in my mind, another couple of things that keep this ship from really achieving the number 1 status in the Rebel fleet, and the first is that it doesn't really seem to have any sort of carrying capacity. Like, there's no evidence that it has a hangar which would allow starfighters to come out, and that would really help the ship in battle. The second issue I have with this ship, and I will admit this is a pretty small one, is that like the Nebulon B, the MC-75 seems to have some weird structural anomalies. And on the MC75, the command bridge, which of course is where all the important people are, is at the bottom of this large spire. And I don't know, to me, that just screams, please shoot right here. I don't know, a pretty small gripe, and notwithstanding the two things I just said, the MC75 was the second strongest ship used by the Rebel Alliance. Alright, so time for number 1, and this is probably a surprise to no one, but the most powerful ship used by the Rebel Alliance was the MC80 Star Cruiser. As always, it's worth keeping in mind that there are several different kinds of MC80 cruisers, but as I always do when I talk about this line of ships, I'm going to focus on the Home One class because it's really the strongest and most powerful of the MC80s. You might be asking, what makes the Home One so amazing? Well, it's certainly not its size because it's only 1.3 kilometers long, big for a Rebel ship, but not, huge in the grand scheme of things. What really makes this ship stand out is its technology. It's got really superior shielding and probably one of the thickest hulls used during the Galactic Civil War. What also is really impressive to me is the versatility of this ship. It could carry 120 starfighters. That's really like a small fleet in and of itself. The Home One was also relatively well armed, and it was no Imperial II by any stretch of the imagination, but it had over 70 combined ion cannons and turbo lasers. So really, what makes this ship great is not its firepower, but the fact that it can jump into battle with a whole fleet of starfighters, take a beating, and give it back a little bit too. And for that reason, the Home One, and really the MC80 class generally, were the strongest ships used by the Rebel Alliance. Anyways guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Now that my move is over, my upload schedule should be pretty much back to normal, so expect a video every day at around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to support the channel, I've put an Amazon affiliate link down in the description. Click that and you can buy Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, which of course featured 4 of the capital ships on this list. If you buy that movie or really anything on Amazon from that link, I'll get a small portion of the proceeds. But of course, you never have to do that. You can keep coming back here for regular content. And you know what? I really appreciate it, guys. So thank you very much for watching. As always, may the Force be with you.